Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to show the first part of my new construction project, which is to commemorate 100 subscribers. It's a 100-year-old building, the Ritz Tower in Manhattan. Now, as I always start with buildings, I want to know what I'm working with. The height was easy to figure out. For the footprint of the building, I had to do an estimate based off of Google Maps, that's the purple, and then I did by counting how many windows and how I wanted the windows to be spaced, an estimate that's in the red. And I use Google Street View images to get the two street-facing facades of the building. And these are how I'm going to plan it out. Now, I like to try to err on the side of being a little bit larger because when working in Minecraft, the blocks, you want to give yourself enough space to work with. I'm putting it in this part of my city that has some interesting things. That's the Palace of the Soviets, a building that was never actually built. We have the Eiffel Tower. This is kind of just an experimental area of my world. It's still the same world file that has Versailles and all of the other projects I've worked on, but this is going to be a nice, tall, downtown-style building. Now, the height of it may end up being a little bit larger if I have the width and depth also a little bit larger than the real one, but mostly I'm going to try to keep the height accurate. Now, I can go ahead and get rid of this purple layout for what the footprint could be. And this was also just an estimate, and it was on the smaller side as an estimate, so we're probably going to be in the right ballpark when I build the building. Now, since it only has two street-facing facades, the other two walls I'm not going to have to worry too much about, or at least not until I get higher up and the building is free on all four sides. And I'm going to use those street view images as reference. And as I built this, I just kept looking back and forth between them to try to figure out how do I want the elevation to be. The inside of the building, well, on the ground level, I don't know exactly what it looks like. I don't know what the floor plan is. I'm going to have to do my best guess. It is, or it looks like commercial space. Now, you always want to make sure that you have higher ceilings than the other floors above, and also a mezzanine for mechanical access. So the front facade, the lower floors, is going to be a bit taller than everything up above. The ground level also on these styles of building that were popular in the early 20th century tend to be more ornate. Now, of course, there is some ornamentation up on top, but down here on the street level, there's a lot of sculpture, there's a lot of stonework, things that really make the building feel rich and ritzy. Now, my main goal right now is to try to get the proportions correct. See, we have for this street-facing facade, 2 bays on the outside, and then 3 large arched windows in the middle. And I just want to make sure that I give enough space in between them and enough space for the openings themselves. The doorways, I'm going to do 2 blocks wide for a pair of double doors. For the arches, I can do a few different things. I'm trying to build this building with an even number of blocks wide. So that means that the middle arched window is going to have to be an even number of blocks, either 4 or 6. I think 6 is too wide, so I'll stick with 4. That means that the other 2 windows will be 4 blocks wide as well. Sometimes I will fudge things a little bit. Actually, back to my Versailles project, there is one pair of windows that are 3 blocks wide instead of 2 blocks wide. And that was so that I could have chandeliers throughout the palace that weren't off center. I don't have to worry about that as much with this building. It's much smaller. It doesn't have the same kind of structural implications, but I still want to make sure that I'm consistent as I'm starting out. because if I mismeasure right now, it's going to cause me a few problems later on. The other street-facing facade is a little bit different. It does have 3 arched windows, but they're separated by what seem to be storefront windows. It's also not entirely symmetrical this side, because the tower, as it goes up, is off-centered on top of this this ground floor area. And when we look at the reference pictures, you can see that the tower is not centered perfectly on the footprint down here on the ground. So I just have to try to make sure that I have the arched windows far enough apart, also not too close together. You can see I have a little bit of trouble here because this is 11 blocks wide, whereas over here it's 10 blocks wide. So I have to fix that because I want these pieces to be symmetrical across the middle arched window. I don't want to make both of them 11 wide because I think that'll be too wide altogether. Since I did my estimate with the footprint in the red wool to be erring on the larger side, now whenever I have to make an estimate or judgment, I'll err on the shorter side. That way I hopefully get closer to the real life proportions. And that's something that I do with all of the buildings that I work on. Now, unfortunately, the main block that I'm using for this more ornate ground floor part of the building, it matches the sidewalk. I'm not crazy about it. I could have done this in diorite, something white, a little bit cleaner, but the building itself, it's not really white on the ground level, and I have enough buildings like that just across the street. I have enough white stone. There's another building across the street on the other side, or a block over rather, that has a lot of white. I want to make sure that the city has some variation in the colors. So I'll just make sure that the ornamentation is appropriately contrasting. And now figuring out how high exactly I want the arched windows to be. Now they are pretty tall in real life. They cover more than one story, but I want to make sure that I don't go too tall. Again, because I want to try to have the overall height of the building be consistent with the real life one, even if the width and depth are slightly larger. I'll use this nice weathered copper, or this is fully oxidized copper actually. A lot of early 20th century neoclassical buildings would have copper elements that over the years weathered. And also I can change this at any time if I think that green stands out too much. But I think it might be just right. And we also need to make sure that I get this other level that's up on top. I'm not sure exactly if this level I'm building would be considered the mezzanine, or if the mezzanine is the level below it and this is the first floor of the building. I don't believe that the real life building has any apartments on this floor that I'm building right now. For those that don't know, the Ritz Tower is well, it was built as an apartment hotel. That is, that people could pay a lot of money to rent out apartments, but they didn't usually have the same kind of 12-month lease or what have you that a lot of other apartments typically will have. It was something that was more on a week-to-week basis or a month-to-month basis. It was something for richer clientele so that they could live in the city, but if they owned homes elsewhere, they didn't have to worry about purchasing um, an apartment in Manhattan or even about leasing an apartment for a year. It was something that allowed for a bit more freedom. Of course, not at a cheap price. The concept does exist for cheaper versions, but the Ritz Tower is not one of them. And today there are apartments in the Ritz Tower. People can buy apartments, condos, and they range in size. Some of them are quite large. But because it has a lot of apartments, there's going to be a lot of repetition. And because of that, I'll be able to just copy and paste a lot of the floors as I go up. Now I want to make sure that the outside facade is consistent, and I'm going to have the interior built to match the outside. In this video, I'm not going to get around to doing the inside just yet. That's going to be a project all for itself. It also doesn't always lend itself so great to recording. Sometimes it's a little bit jarring as I move around, placing furniture, things inside. But we'll see where we go with the next handful of videos that I make about this building. I'm not quite sold on using this andesite for the cornice, but we'll keep it for now and see how it goes. And you can see that it's starting to come together. Again, I just keep looking back and forth between what I'm building and the reference picture. I was doing that the other day when I was working on the Queen's Hamlet at Versailles, because it's built around a amorphous-shaped pond that I really wanted to try to get right, and I just kept looking back and forth between the picture and what I was doing here in the game. We want to make sure that we get these nice large doorways here on the edges. With the nice small windows above. There we go. And now just above these arched windows, we have some more windows, but we also have some ornamentation in between. There are a few different ways I can do it. The real life one seems to have kind of stone carved shields, coats of arms. I'll see how best I can approximate that. I can use armor stands to make statues. I'm not sure that necessarily applies here. And as it is, the statues that I make with armor stands, I cover either in gold armor, which looks like gold statues, or netherite armor, which looks like white marble statues. I don't have any other more neutral colors for armor. But between walls and shelves and other items, and also using my handy debug stick, I'll be able to figure out some kind of geometry that works the way I want it to. And when building in Creative, the debug stick I use all the time. It's very handy for getting the walls to be the way you want them to. See, here we can adjust short or tall. In this texture pack, I have the stone walls as looking like chiseled stone bricks with the post. And when it's short walls, they look like stone brick walls. When they're tall walls, they look like polished stone slabs, giving that nice fluted column look. I also have the texture pack set so that when you take away the central part of the walls, it doesn't glitch out. It looks solid. That's become very handy for building larger columns on some of my other buildings. You can see it on the front columns of Buckingham Palace. It doesn't translate so well to other texture packs, though I first got the idea by looking at another texture pack somebody had done. I can't remember which one it was now, but I know I'm not the only one to do it. But it definitely is not how it is in vanilla. Or the default, I should say. Because this is all vanilla. There are no mods here. I don't even like to use shaders just because it slows down my computer. Sometimes I'll use shaders just for taking pictures. But this is all vanilla Minecraft. It just uses a texture pack that somebody else had made and somebody else updated, and then I took a look at it and I used it for years. I really liked it, and when it wasn't being updated anymore, I decided to work on it myself. And since then, I've added quite a lot of custom models, a lot of custom textures, things that I've added as I've needed. And here we are working on the other street-facing facade. We want all of the patterns to be consistent with the shorter side. Now the other 3 tall arched windows. I think I'm going to want these windows to be just a little bit shorter. Sometimes you really want the windows to be 2.5 blocks tall instead of 2 or 3, but you can't always get what you want. One way to kind of affect that is to use stairs, either on the upper or lower parts of the windows, but which I may use here. We'll see exactly how I want it to be. Have some more of that copper in. In the background, you can see one of the custom buildings that I did with the yellow walls and the white dome. It's actually one of a pair of buildings that have symmetry both lengthwise and widthwise. So I only built 1/4 of one building, and I just copied it over again, and then copied the whole building. So I did it in I did 1/8 of the work. They're kind of interestingly designed buildings. When you look at the floor plan, it kind of looks like a the blade of a safety razor. Those were some of the first buildings that I did over in this section of the world. I always intended to work on skyscrapers over here, and you can see some front facades of early 20th century, maybe not skyscrapers, but tall buildings that I had planned out. There actually was one over here on this corner. I made sure to move it out of the way before starting the Ritz Tower. And now above this commercial floor, we're going to have, I believe it is the mezzanine, some smaller windows. There we go. And now the floor above. Again, we're going to do it in the same order as on the shorter facade. And while I said that there's not symmetry across this whole facade, there are symmetrical elements, things that I want to make sure match each other. You can see here we run into an issue where this corner is actually too far out compared to the other side of the building. So let's just shave that off. Like I said, when we figured out the original footprint size, we erred on the larger side. So now if we need to shave things down to make them smaller, it should be fine. And see, here we want to have the windows be 2 blocks wide, but also 2 blocks apart. Now, we run into some trouble because over on the other side, we have some windows that are just 1 block wide. It just really doesn't fit quite as well as one would hope. We probably don't need these side bays to be quite as wide. So let's go ahead and move the 2 outer arched windows out to be a little bit wider. We'll still end up with skinnier windows in the middle, but that little bit of asymmetry we can tolerate. I think we should be fine having the arched windows go out a little bit more. We'll still keep them the same width, 4 wide, because I think that 5 is just too large. Here we go, and now if we have the space in between the windows directly over the tops, we'll actually be able to avoid having any skinny windows. There we go. 2 wide window, 2 wide space. Well, I guess we'll have a 1 wide space there, but the windows are more prominent, so it's better to have windows that are wider than having the space that's wider. I think that should be fine. Especially since the 2 wide plain stone spaces that are just above the arched windows are going to have the ornamentation. So I need enough space for that. And then over here, we don't have to worry about skinny spacers in between the windows. We'll be able to have that extra stone there. There we go. And now also it lines up nicely over here. Good. Now over here. That should be fine. And we can go ahead and put the cornice on this side as well. And you know what? I really don't like that andesite cornice, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it with a stone brick stairs. I have to make sure that I always set the time to 0 so that I have daylight. I could work in nighttime, but it frustrates me. Sometimes I'll use a potion of night vision, but you have to take care of that every 8 minutes. And I do like having the natural light moving through the day so I can see the way that the light interacts with different elements of the building. And I really don't get that. I don't get to see the shadows when I have the potion of night vision. There we go. Good. Now we just want to make sure that we have the headers over the doors here. Actually, in this case, it's just the one door. There is a marquee over the over a doorway down on the other side, but I'll take care of that later. That's all street level stuff. Now, as I said, the main part of the tower is off-center, so there's a terrace over this part of the building, but it's not a flat terrace. There is another level that goes up. Now, I'm not sure if that just hides some machinery. There are windows. I'm not sure if there are real rooms behind them, if it's ornamental, but however it is, it's just part of the architecture, so I want to make sure that from the outside it matches. We want to make sure that it's not too tall. But we also want to make sure it's not too squat either. Should be fine. And then if we use some stone walls to narrow these out a little bit, because they don't need to be 4 blocks wide. That's as wide as the arched windows down below. They need to be narrower. I don't like, though, how this first level is too tall, though. I think I want these windows to be a little bit more square. So I'm just going to copy the level with the cornice down, and then erase the original space using the clone and fill commands. Just so it doesn't bother me, let's go ahead and fix this one piece of wool that I just erased from the height marker. There we go. And now let's move this down manually. We don't need it to be 4 tall. So we'll go ahead and move the top down as well. The whole thing is just a little bit too tall. And I want to get to the main floors of the building that have all the apartments. I don't want to have too much attention devoted to this section of the building. Let's go ahead and narrow these windows as well. And once I put glass in between, it will fill in the walls, so there'll be 2 block wide windows consistent with the floor below. And like I said, I'm not sure that there's even a room up above that stone protrusion that goes up. So I don't need to worry about it being too close to the floor below with only one block difference. For the main floors of the building, we're going to want to make sure that they are 5 blocks tall. If we have 1 block for the floor and then a slab for the ceiling to cover up the floor above, that gives us 3.5. Yeah, make sure we have anvils here for the bolstrons. 3.5 blocks for each of the apartments, which I think is perfect. Sometimes I'll use 2.5 for smaller buildings or more, lower class apartments. But here, I think that 3.5 will be perfect. Now let's just make sure that we have our windows ordered, because this is going to be the pattern that goes all the way up and informs how we do every floor above. Now we want to figure out what material to use. In this case, I'm going to use a concrete texture. It's not one of the ones I came up with. It was inherited with this texture pack. Looks like yellow bricks, and I think this matches pretty nicely what they use on the facade for the real-life Ritz tower. We're not going to use it all the way, and I'll explain a little bit more later. But for here, I think it's perfect. We'll also, for a cornice around this floor, use shelves. I've been very happy with the addition of shelves to the game because I don't have to rely on stair blocks every time I want to have a cornice. I don't have to have it coming out so dramatically. It's much more subtle, but it is better than just having a flat block and a flat face. There we go. There have been times I've used trapdoors, but I've been limited with the trapdoor textures I have. Once shelves were added to the game, I realized I had a whole bunch of textures that I could do whatever I wanted with, because I had never used them before in the game, didn't have to worry about ruining any old builds. And I haven't even used up all of the trapdoor or the shelf textures yet. Yes, now see here, I want these windows to be perfectly over the windows beneath. Because this is how many windows there are on this floor in the real life Ritz tower. That means that when I use the blueprints, oh, wait a second, we have an extra one here. The thing is, I want this part of the building to be symmetrical across the middle. That means I'm going to have to shave it down 1 more block, or make it 1 block wider, but I don't really want to make it wider. The spaces between the arched windows and these shop front bays are already wide enough, and the bays themselves are wide enough already. If I make the whole building wider by a block, it's going to stretch the real life building a little bit too much. So we're going to have to make it just another block shorter to get rid of that extra 1 here on this second window. So to do that, let's go ahead and just copy this whole section, copy it to exactly 100 blocks above, and then copy that down to where I need it to be. There we go. See, clone it to be exactly 100 blocks above. I do this whenever I want to make sure that I don't, well, because you can't clone over the existing blocks, the cloned blocks. There it is up there. And just in case I mess something up, I have the copy up above. I don't lose anything. There we go. Copy it down here so it's moved one block over. There we go, from 18 to 19. Excellent. Now I can just go ahead and shave this part off. And going back over here. Fix that. And the issue was that I had that extra block. Here, let's go ahead and get rid of what's above. I don't need that anymore. Fill with air to get rid of it. All right. So that bay over here on the left also has to be adjusted. Let's go ahead and do this up here. Excellent. Now down below. And the bay. Perfect. That's the way that I want it to be. So yes, as I do the interior for the apartment levels, I'm going to use existing blueprints. They're from the 20s when this was designed. And I'll make sure that I try to be as accurate as possible. Of course, I'm going to have to make some concessions. But if I have the right number of windows, it makes it a little bit easier. If I don't, then I have to figure out if I cut down one room, the size, if I cut out another room entirely. It's just, this way, it's just, do I cut down the sizes of rooms? And I also have an idea. I'll use some shelves and walls for the ornamentation up here. I'll still probably change it in time. But let's go ahead and extend. This is the base of the tower proper. Like I said, there's this nice terrace area out in front. But everything from here up is going to be more or less symmetrical across both length and width. Some of the lower floors, well, I don't necessarily have to have a skyscraper right next door. I can just have a tall building that shares a wall going up about 3 floors. But then the upper floors of a building next to this can be set in a little bit. It could just be a shorter building. Just make sure that we also here have even spacing between the windows. Excellent. Something else I like to do when with any building is having an external wall and an internal wall. It does make the walls extremely thick, but I think it's necessary for the aesthetics, because I don't want the inside walls of all of these apartments to have this yellow brick. I want them to just be look like they were painted white, standard apartments. There we go. Yep, that looks about the right height. Now, doing the math, the whole building is supposed to be 165 meters tall, but it's also supposed to be 40 floors. Now, if the floors are mostly about 5 blocks tall, well, that math doesn't add up. So we may end up having fewer floors, maybe make the whole thing just slightly taller. it doesn't really matter as long as the overall effect is similar. Now see, for this floor, these middle walls are indented slightly, but I don't want to have them a whole block indented, and I don't want to make it too complicated by using walls or anything like that. I want to have this nice smooth yellow texture. So by having this different texture, I'm creating some contrast with the rougher edges of the building. And I think that will stand in for having a different levels, rather different faces. All right, I'll do it on this side as well. Yes, the problem with using walls is I would have to figure out which wall to use. Even if I used sandstone walls, they have that fluted texture, which looks a little bit too heavy. So any benefit I get from having it actually being indented, I lose from that indented section of the wall being too heavy in color and texture. This way I think is much better. And here you can see the 5 tall floors. You have, well, actually it's going to be the slab for the ceiling is going to align with the top half of the top window block, which is fine. That's something that you see in real life architecture all the time, most often because of drop ceilings. Not that I want this to look like it has drop ceilings, but it's an estimation that I'm okay with. And I'm fine with the windows, the base of the window being 1 block above the floor. We'll just use a standard window pane here. This is a black stained glass. I most often either use this or white stained glass, which looks like this but white. Of course, I use the other stained glasses. Some of the textures I created myself, but a lot of times you don't want to overcomplicate it. And especially a building like this, the windows themselves, the glass, it's pretty standard. And there's no need to go crazy with it. Now let's go ahead and clone this section. Copy and paste it up a few times. I believe that it's between floors 6 and 19 that are, the plans are mostly identical. Each have a number of apartments, along with, of course, all of the elevators and staircases and any kind of HVAC in the middle. But when I'm building skyscrapers, I always make sure that I do the clone command. There's no need to be doing each floor individually. Now, as I get to some of the higher floors that are set back, I am going to have to do, one of those that's different from these, and then copy and paste that a few times. And the very top of the building, it gets extremely varied. So there's going to be a lot more involved. But as it is right now, this is where I'm at. I have a good base for the skyscraper. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I'll make sure to make some more of these so you can see the progress. And also check out some of my other videos. I'm working on this in between my Versailles project. There are some other projects that are old that I've wanted to get back into. Let me know what you think. Check out the other ones. Thanks for watching. Bye.